Everybody, hi, this is Mr. Dutt from Deerhoff High School, bringing you a lesson from the U.S. History class for my 11th graders at Deerhoff High School. I would do this normally when I am teaching in the classroom and have a PowerPoint and do all kinds of questions, but what I decided to do is bring a daily lesson to you guys on YouTube so that you can see and learn from what we were going to do in this unit on what's called the Cold War. Now, the Cold War lasted from 1947 to 1991, so it was right after the conclusion of World War II. And today we're going to learn a little overview of what happened during the Cold War and how the Cold War ended so that we became a little bit more free along with the different countries that were in Europe. So I'm going to use this kind of slideshow here that I drew instead of using PowerPoint, so that you guys can see what happened. And as I said, this happened from 1947 to 1991. Now, some people say it happened from 1945 till 1991. That's a little bit disputed, but hey, we'll just go with what the experts say is 1947 to 1991. So today we're going to talk about a little overview of what happened after World War II took place. So we drew a map here, and Germany, being the loser of World War II, basically ended up being taken over by the Allies at the end of World War II and put into 4 different spaces. So you can see here that Great Britain took the green area, which is on the map, and that's in western northern part of Germany. France, in the blue area, took over below Great Britain and was right next to their country, which is the region they had at the end of World War I. Also, Russia, which had one of the largest areas, took over in the northeastern part of Germany, and the United States took over here in the orange, which is also known as Bavaria. And so the 4 different zones were agreed upon after the war between the 4 allies that took Germany to task during World War II. And so this would become a problem because then Germany, along with the rest of Europe, will be split up into 2 zones. One that would be Eastern Europe, which would be communist, and one would be the capitalist or the democracies in the western part of Europe, and would be divided between the 2 superpowers during the Cold War, which were the USSR and the United States. So let's take a look at what that division did, how that was done, and where it took the world after World War II took place. So we're going to take a look at what the divide was between the eastern part, which was controlled by Russia or the Soviet Union, the USSR, and the western part, which was controlled by the Allies, Great Britain, France, and the United States. So the United States leaves after World War II is over, comes home, and there's democracies that are formed in Western Europe and communist bloc, which is in the eastern part of Europe. And so there's 2 different philosophies taking control of these countries during that time period. The first was on the eastern part, which was more of safety and protection that the USSR put together against the capitalists of the western part of Europe. And what the United States and its allies said to the different countries in the western part of Europe was, we're going to give you guys freedom, which is different than what they're getting in Eastern Europe. Okay? And what that does, if you take a look here at the bottom, why were these different places like divided like this? Well, it was fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of one attacking the other defending against the other. And it's kind of what we talk about in class in different time periods in history. Fear rules the day. And what does fear do? It makes you ally with other countries so that you feel protected, safe, and or free. So that's why the different parts of Europe were divided during this time period, because they were fearful of the unknown, or fearful of the person or the country that they were against. So this is where we see the major divide during the Cold War. Now, as we take a look, one of the things that characterized the divide between the 2 superpowers, the USSR and the United States, was a space race during the time of the Cold War. And the Soviet Union was the one that launched their first space vehicle, and that was called Sputnik. That went up, as you see the date here, October 4th, 1957. And it made the United States fearful, not only because the Soviet Union was the first country to launch anything into space, but it was also they were afraid that they were spying on the United States, spying on where their missile sites were, spying on what the United States was doing. And so there was a rush for the United States to actually start its space program. And one of the first things, or first satellites that it put into the space was Explorer 1. And you can tell the date, that was January 31st, 1958, which wasn't too long after Sputnik was launched in the year previous. And so the United States didn't want to fall behind what the Soviet Union was doing, and so they wanted to get into the space race as well. So it was a competition between the two different superpowers, which not only was a competition to see who could conquer space, but also a shift for power. They were fearful of what the other nation was going to do during this time period, so they basically wanted to race to see who can get ahead of the other side. Okay? So as we go through here is something that you can tell of what the world thought of this divide. And this is a speech that was done by Winston Churchill, who was the former Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II. He was ousted after the war by a competing party, but he was still a hero according to the United States. So he did many speeches in the United States, especially this one, which he called the divide in Europe, called the Iron Curtain. And here he says, from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an Iron Curtain has descended across the continent. And he was talking about Europe, obviously. And that was the imaginary line that divided both East and Western Europe. Okay? And he was considered a hero in the United States because of all the different things that he did during World War II and all the different things that he stated during World War II and how much of an ally he was to the United States. So this gives you an overview of what the Cold War was about, and we'll be learning daily on the different specific things that went into the Cold War as well. But before I leave you guys for the day, I have a trivia question for you, which I'll have for you every day. And you can answer this in the comments section below the video itself. And so here's the trivia question for today. It says, name the book that is most shoplifted in the world. So if you'd like to answer that question, you can put it in the response section below this video, and the answer will be revealed tomorrow. Hey guys, I hope you guys are doing good. I miss you, and hope we'll get back together again soon, but we'll see you tomorrow with our next lesson. Take care.